This is Liz Frenzel with Crawford Media Group in Denver, and today our guest is Walker Wildmon, Vice President of American Family Association, one of the largest and most effective pro-family organizations in the country. We'll be talking about how companies like Tractor Supply and John Deere are returning to traditional American values. Welcome to our program, Walker.
Hey, Liz. Thanks so much for having me on.
Walker, first tell us a little bit about AFA.
Yeah, American Family Association started in 1977 by my grandfather, Don Wildmon, and he was disappointed and really disgusted with some of the filth on television, even back in the late 70s and early 80s, with the sex and violence. So he started American Family Association, and we've been advocating for biblical morality and strong families in American culture ever since then.
That's a pretty big feat.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of an overwhelming task, but we're a Christian organization, and the Bible tells us we're called to be salt and light in our culture and in our society, and so that's what we're doing. And one of the ways to have a strong moral society is to have strong families. So we haven't lost sight of the importance of having a mom and a dad in the home, creating a strong family unit, and that's how really society and culture thrives.
Yeah, well, it's companies like yours that are truly bringing us back to the family values and coming against big conglomerates, the media that we have, the movies that are out there. That's something that is worth a fight. So we appreciate you doing that.
Well, thanks, Liz. Thanks. Appreciate that.
So what we were going to talk about is the big companies like Tractor Supply and John Deere and how they're returning to traditional American values. What do you see going on with this?
Well, corporate America for a few decades has been largely hostile to traditional moral biblical values, and they've been moving really far to the left ideologically. And we can bring up companies like Disney and Target and others and cite example after example. But even more well-respected companies like John Deere and Tractor Supply have been having issues recently, specifically when it comes to promoting left-wing ideologies within the company and publicly with their ad buys and things like that, and the things that they celebrate on their social media accounts. So that's what we've been seeing over the last few decades. But more recently, the American people have woken up to the left-wing agenda that many of these corporations are pushing, and they're using our consumer money to push ideologies that have nothing to do with their core business functions onto their consumers. So Americans are over it. Consumers are done with it. We just want good quality companies that provide excellent goods and services and that focus on their primary and core business functions and not pushing ideologies on customers and little kids. So the consumers have woken up to this, and there's a lot of backlash involved.
So what you're saying basically is that these companies were pushing these movements. And when we say ideologies, are we talking LGBTQ? Are we talking the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, whole format that's trying to be pushed?
Well, pretty much everything that the Democrat Party is in favor of, these corporations have been pushing. So the corporations have been pushing Marxist ideologies. They've been pushing sexual deviancy, meaning the homosexual agenda, transgenderism. They've also been pushing sex and violence in television and their ad spins. So a lot of immorality has been promoted by these companies, and the ideologies that they're pushing, like you mentioned, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is the opposite of promoting and hiring people based on merit and skill. All of this is rooted in Marxism, cultural Marxism, and a deterioration of morality, where you have people who are humanist, who don't believe in God, and they want to promote man as the highest being on earth. The problem with that is man is inherently sinful. That's what the Bible says. So they're promoting these humanist ideals and ideologies that are ultimately wicked, and abortion's one of those. that they've been promoting in their partnerships and corporate donations to Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the country. So, yeah, it's pretty much 100% been Democrat Marxist ideologies pushed by these corporations.
And if you were to pick this name apart, this DEI agenda, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it actually sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds good. A lot of things sound good in passing, but when you actually start looking into what it is, it's very, very evil. So diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a push by some in our culture and society and in major corporations to hire people based on immutable characteristics, such as skin color, for example, or their biology, whether it be male or female. And yes, there are only two sexes, male or female. So they've been hiring people based on those immutable characteristics that are unchangeable. So if a person is born with a different melatonin level, that's out of their control. That's just part of their biological makeup. Same thing with male or female. And they've been hiring these quotas. So the problem with that is that that's against federal law. That's against the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it puts people who don't fall into these minority categories at a disadvantage for jobs. And so it's all out wrong in the name of something virtuous like diversity. Diversity is not in and of itself virtuous. You know, groups have been promoting diversity, and it sounds good, right? Who doesn't want to be diverse? But in practice, that means that you have to reject people who don't fit the quote-unquote diversity standard. And when you start rejecting people who meet the merit and meet the skill of the job, if you're talking about hiring, that's wrong. That's wrong, because you should be hiring people and promoting people based on their skills and the fact that they're qualified for the job, not because of their skin color or because they're a male or female. Right.
I totally agree. So would you say that DEI is biblical or ethical?
No, the DEI as we know it is very unbiblical and immoral. And here's why. We're all created in the image of God. Our Declaration of Independence talks about this. So we're all created in the image of God. So as far as our value goes before God and man, we're all of equal value. We're all equally important before God because He created each and every one of us. But we're all created with different skills and abilities. And not everybody is good at the same thing. So we can't force people into positions because of different diversity quotas that are outside of the control of individuals. So it's really wrong to do that, and it puts others at an extreme disadvantage. Not only, also it's against federal law to do so, to discriminate based on some of these characteristics. So all in all, it's a societal ill that should not be promoted. And if you look at cultures who have done this in the past, like communist China, it's turned out very, very badly. A lot of evil atrocities have been committed. Nazi Germany, for example, when you belittle and demonize certain classes of society and certain people with immutable characteristics that they can't control or change.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's actually not beneficial to any company hiring based on your skin color or whatever, because you're not getting those that are qualified and have gone to school to do these jobs, but you're just hiring anyone because they fit a mold, right?
Yeah, this really brings into question the entire quota system. Affirmative action is what it's called, that we've had actually on the books and in place for decades, really since the 70s and 80s. The problem with affirmative action is it discriminates. Somebody's being discriminated against because these universities, for example, or even some of these corporations who apply these quotas, they're hiring people based on skin color or sex, and they're rejecting people who are better qualified for the position. So this battle against DEI even implicates affirmative action, which is something maybe 20 years ago nobody would have questioned. How dare you question affirmative action? If you do, you're racist. But it really should cause us to discuss, is affirmative action even a good thing or not?
Right. So you're saying these large companies such as Tractor Supply and John Deere, they actually were trying to push that agenda, and now they're trying to change their tune and actually go back to traditional values?
Yeah, both of those companies that you just mentioned, John Deere and Tractor Supply, it was reported by multiple media outlets that they were circulating internal training documents implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the workplace, and having multiple employee training sessions on this Marxist ideology that's very discriminatory. So once that was uncovered and publicized, both companies began walking that back effective immediately, and they both even put out public statements saying basically we're not going to have anything to do with this DEI moving forward. And they even said that they're not going to participate in the Human Rights Campaign's annual survey of corporations, which HRC, for those who don't know, the Human Rights Campaign, that's one of the largest LGBTQ organizations in the country that scores companies based on how left-wing they are when it comes to the issue of human sexuality. So for John Deere and Tractor Supply to take this public stance, renouncing its own operation and turning back towards focusing on its primary business purposes is a very, very good sign.
Yeah, that is, and I think just because they're large companies, so that could be the snowball effect, right? The other companies are going to see them doing that and jump on that bandwagon, and we'll start seeing other companies doing the same thing.
I think so. We've got to keep the pressure on as consumers and as public policy advocates. I think the reason this is not rocket science. So when companies wander outside of their primary perimeter of business operations, things typically don't go very well. So when companies start weighing in on areas and subjects that are not within its area of expertise, such as John Deere not talking about tractors, but talking about homosexuality and transgenderism, it just doesn't go well because they've got to build a corporate office full of people who are supposed to be working on building the best tractors in the world, and then they start wanting to talk about transgenderism or DEI, and it just doesn't go well. So we've always had the position that companies need to be neutral. They just need to focus on their core business functions and offer the best services and products humanly possible to their customers. And companies that do that tend to do very well from a financial standpoint.
We've been visiting with Walker Wildmon, Vice President of American Family Association, one of the largest and most effective pro-family organizations in the country. And we've been talking about how large corporations are turning away from the leftist propaganda and returning to the values of the communities and customers that they serve. Walker, where should our listeners go to learn more about American Family Association?
To view all of the information about AFA and our different ways for people to get engaged and activated, they can simply go to our main website, and that is afa.net, afa.net.
Thank you so much for taking the time with us and letting us know what is going on out there, and it's good news. So we appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks so much, Liz. Appreciate you bringing attention to this.